He was an executioner whose terrible reputation preceded him. All around the streets of London during the latter parts of the 17th century, the public feared to even utter his name. Being an axeman and an executioner was a skilled job, almost like how being a carpenter or a blacksmith was. However, the stakes were much higher. For every execution which went wrong, the public would utter their anger and discontent, and the man who is regarded as England's worst executioner in history was one man who almost caused a riot because of his terrible skill with the axe. Jack Ketch's name is written in the history books for all the wrong reasons, and his name today is associated with death, blunder, and even the devil himself. Ketch was a criminal, a man who was given a chance to redeem himself by becoming an executioner inside of the English capital, but why was he so bad? Why did he make a complete mess of executing a king's son? It's not known when Ketch was born, and it is assumed that he was born inside of London, the very city where he worked in the gruesome profession of taking lives for the crown. His early life is also somewhat of a mystery too, but he first rose to prominence in the year 1683, after he succeeded to the position of an executioner in London. The man he replaced was his master, and Ketch was the apprentice. Edward Dunn was known as the common hangman of London, someone who was tasked with executing those men and women who were convicted of serious crimes at Tyburn, on the triangular feared gallows known as the Tyburn Tree. It was common for the public to run towards Tyburn when executions were carried out, almost as if they were watching a sporting occasion today. The gruesome spectacle of bodies sprung up from the triangular gallows for some was too much to miss, and the bloodthirsty crowds watched as the hangman performed his job. Hanging and condemning victims in this way was something Jack Ketch was by all accounts rather skilled at. He completed most of his executions using the gallows with no issues and without complaint, but it was with another weapon that Ketch became infamous. In terms of the historical records of Ketch, he was first mentioned in writing inside the proceedings for the Old Bailey Court on the 14th of January 1676, but he was at some point years later a prisoner himself, as he was locked inside of Marshalsea Prison in London. He wrote a pamphlet, and in this documented that whereby his hoped harvest was like to have been blasted. Marshalsea was known for being a very feared place, and although it is not known why Jack Ketch was imprisoned here, he was later released and went back to the day job, hanging and executing London's criminals and most wanted. He was a man who was also expected to complete the most gruesome and sadistic executions inside of England's cities, and he must have been well respected as he was dispatched to the city of Oxford in the late August of 1681. And at this time it would be the traitor Stephen College, one of the supporters of the Popish plot, who would meet a gruesome end. He was to be executed using the incredibly feared hanging, drawing and quartering method. The victim was paraded into the city of Oxford on a cart before he arrived at the executioner's scaffold, with Jack Ketch waiting for him armed with his axe and various other weapons to complete the most disturbing of jobs. The method of hanging, drawing and quartering had many different steps, each one more barbaric than the previous, and one witness claimed of Ketch's work that day. When College had hanged about half an hour, he was cut down by Ketch and quartered under the gallows. His entrails were burned in a fire made by the gallows. In reality, Ketch had hanged College until almost dead, and then cut off his genitals and sliced open his stomach, removing vital organs which were burnt in front of the victim, all before he then hacked Stephen College's head and cut his body into 4 pieces. This was light work for a man who would become known for making a mess of executions, and the crowd cheered every swing of Ketch's axe was landed upon the poor victim. But then, the troubling botched executions came for Jack Ketch. By all accounts, as mentioned, he was skilled with certain execution methods. Hanging did not trouble him at all, and there was little that could go wrong with this, as he literally choked the last gasps of air out of a victim, but with the axe, the infamous weapon that had taken the heads off of 2 queens of England during the Tudor period, Jack Ketch was not so skilled. You see, the aim of an execution by axe was to land one successful blow on the neck of the condemned with such skill and power that the head of the victim came off. This is what was expected, and kings and queens even gave some mercy to those sentenced to be hanged, drawn and quartered, as death sentences were changed to beheading. This was seen as the monarchy being nice, granting the condemned a quicker and swifter death. It's important to consider too that crowds who witnessed executions expected the same, a skilled executioner who would work with skill and precision, and not one who would make a mess. In the form of Jack Ketch and his axe, the crowd witnessed a blundering beast struggling to perform his vital job. It was really for 2 executions that Jack Ketch is remembered in infamy. The first occurred on the 21st of July 1683, as William Russell, Lord Russell, who was sentenced to death for treason, was led towards Tower Hill for his execution. He was a powerful politician, but he opposed the future James II becoming the king after Charles II. For voicing his discontent, he would lose his head. Well, after Ketch made a complete mess of the proceedings, that is. One witness claimed, on that occasion, Ketch wielded the instrument of death either with such sadistically nuanced skill or with such lack of simple dexterity. Nobody could tell which. The victim suffered horrifically under the blow after blow, each excruciating but not in itself lethal. Even among the bloodthirsty throngs that habitually attended English beheadings, the gory and agonising display that created such outrage that Ketch felt moved to write and publish a pamphlet titled Apology, in which he excused his performance with the claim that Lord Russell had failed to dispose himself as was most suitable, and that he was taken therefore distracted while taking aim on his neck. Blow by blow rained down onto Lord Russell's neck, and the crowd looked on in horror and anger as they saw the blundering beast Ketch continue to make a mess. But this would not be the end of his botches and mistakes, as his most high-profile victim, the son of King Charles II, James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth, would experience a similar fate. In the eyes of the English people, some viewed James Scott as the rightful king, as he was the oldest illegitimate son of King Charles II, but his failed rebellion against James II, his uncle, led to him being condemned for treason. It was a sad end for a man who by all accounts was a brilliant soldier and commander. Monmouth was led to the execution scaffold on the 15th of July 1685, and on the platform of death he spoke to Ketch and claimed that he should not make a mess of the execution like he did with Lord Russell's. This may have disturbed Ketch in his work, and even angered him slightly, making him lose composure, but no one could have imagined what they would see next, as Ketch stood with his axe tightly gripped in his right hand. Monmouth would not use a cap which was offered to him to hide his hair, giving Ketch a clear swing on his neck, and he then laid his head on the block after giving Ketch a sack of gold as a bribe to make sure things went well. Ketch was, with his victim lying prone on the block, then struck the first blow. No success. He missed completely, and even Monmouth looked up at him and screamed for Ketch to strike again. The second blow came, then the third, then the fourth, and then the fifth. Ketch had been so troubled by Monmouth's execution that he allegedly even gave up before an official ordered him to continue. Some in the crowd believed this was a sign from God that Ketch was killing the rightful king, and then the crowd turned into a baying mob, wanting Ketch's blood. They expected James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth's execution, to be performed with dignity, and this is not what happened. It was said by an onlooker that the wretch made 5 chops before he had his head off, which so incensed the people that he not been guarded and got away, they would have torn him to pieces. For 2 failed executions, Jack Ketch's name was cemented into the history books as a beast and a barbaric man whose actions with the axe were incredibly unsuccessful. Yes, he ended the lives of Russell and Monmouth, but the crowd expected dignity and decorum. He was a man who later even hanged his own assistant, who had been convicted of robbery. Public executions throughout the 17th century, when Jack Ketch was working, were seen as sport and entertainment, and people flocked in their thousands to see them. However, with Ketch on the scaffold, people did not know what they were going to get, and he was a man who could have very easily been killed himself by the crowd that day when Monmouth's head was hacked from his shoulders. Thank you for watching, and to support, make sure to subscribe. And again, thank you so much for watching.